Hey there. It's the break of dawn outside Baghdad's western gate, and you're already sweating in your only tunic. The city's waking up with a chorus of camel drivers shouting, wheels creaking, and the sour tang of dung curling in your nostrils. Merchants jostle for elbow room, their eyes flicking over you, measuring your worth or weakness. Just as you step forward, a guard's hand thuds against your chest. No one gets in without a good story and a thorough inspection. If you're hoping for a gentle welcome, you're in for a surprise. Before the sun sets, you'll see how quickly fortune can turn to misfortune here. Tonight, you'll learn why even the most confident traveler can unravel in these streets. And there's a twist coming that most modern visitors would never expect. If you're into immersive journeys like this, only hit like and subscribe if you genuinely enjoy getting lost in history's shadows. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is. Let's make this a true, global bedtime gathering. Now, dim the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to slip into a world where every step could change your fate. You stand at the threshold, the city's walls towering above, promising both shelter and threat. The guard's fingers dig into your pouch, eyes narrowing at the sound of coins or the lack of them. A low grunt is all you get as your story is weighed and found barely convincing. Someone behind you coughs, impatient, and the line presses closer, the heat thickening. The city's pulse is a living thing, and you're about to be swallowed whole. Baghdad at sunrise is a feast for the senses, though not always a pleasant one. The air is dense with the scent of roasting meat, rank sweat, and crushed herbs layered over the ever-present dust. Somewhere nearby, the first call to prayer floats above the rooftops, a brief hush before the market's roar returns. You catch sight of a woman balancing a basket of dates, her eyes darting for trouble. Every face you see is a mask, some friendly, some hungry, all alert. You move with the crowd, careful not to brush against the wrong shoulder. In this city, a careless touch can spark a quarrel, and a quarrel can end with a knife. The guard's inspection lingers in your mind as you pass beneath the shadow of the gate. You're in, but you're not safe. The stakes are simple. Your status, your safety, and sometimes your life hang in the balance. One mistake, and you could lose everything. Inside, the street narrows, funneling you into the city's veins. The ground is slick with last night's refuse, and your sandals slip more than once. A donkey brays, nearly knocking you into a fruit cart, and the merchant's glare says, "You'd better watch yourself." The city is always watching too. You feel it in the way conversations hush when you pass, in the sideways glances from old men squatting in doorways. The marketplace is already alive, a riot of color and noise. Sellers hawk silk and spices, their voices rising above the din, while children weave between legs, fingers nimble and quip. You clutch your pouch tighter, remembering the guard's rough hands. Even here, in the heart of commerce, you're prey as much as predator. The aroma of fresh bread almost makes you forget the risk, almost. A man with a scar across his cheek sidles up, offering a deal that sounds too good to be true. You know better than to trust the first bargain in Baghdad. He leans in, whispering about a shortcut to the best baths in the city, but his eyes flick to your pouch. You shake your head, moving on, but the encounter leaves you uneasy. Here, Even kindness comes with strings attached. You try to blend in, mimicking the hurried stride of locals. Every so often, someone barks a price or a warning, and you nod as if you understand every word. The city's dialect shifts block by block, and a mispronounced phrase can mark you as an outsider. The tension is constant, a thread pulled tight. You can't let it snap. Suddenly, a commotion erupts near the well, and the crowd surges. Someone's been caught stealing, a boy, barely 12, dragged by the collar. The punishment is swift, a public shaming, harsh words, and a threat of worse to come. The crowd's mood shifts from curiosity to suspicion, eyes darting for the next target. In Baghdad, mercy is in short supply. You edge away, heart pounding, trying not to draw attention. The city's justice is unpredictable, and you're not eager to test its limits. A beggar tugs at your sleeve, palm outstretched, his plea drowned by the market's roar. You drop a coin, more out of fear than generosity. The beggar's eyes linger, memorizing your face. The sun climbs higher, baking the city's mud-brick walls. You duck into a narrow alley, hoping for shade, but find only more bodies pressed close. A woman scolds a child, her voice sharp, while a stray dog noses through rubbish. The alley smells of rot and old spices. You keep moving, aware that standing still makes you a target. A sudden silence falls as a group of city guards marches past, their eyes scanning for trouble. You freeze, willing yourself invisible. One of them pauses, sniffing the air, then moves on. The tension eases, but only slightly. In Baghdad, anyone could be watching or listening. You emerge into a small courtyard, the air heavy with jasmine and wood smoke. Here, the city's noise softens, replaced by the low murmur of conversation. A group of scholars debates under a fig tree, their words quick and sharp. You linger at the edge, hungry for knowledge but wary of intrusion. Information is currency, and you have little to trade. A merchant's laughter draws your attention back to the street. He boasts of a shipment of rare glass, waving a shard that catches the sun. You wonder what it would fetch in your homeland, but the thought is dangerous. In Baghdad, envy can be fatal. You move on, the city's rhythm pulling you forward. The midday heat is relentless, and sweat stings your eyes. You duck beneath an awning, sharing space with a baker and his flour-dusted apprentice. The baker eyes you, weighing your hunger against your coin. You buy a heel of bread, the crust hard but the taste a small comfort. Every transaction here is a negotiation, sometimes for more than money. A distant shout breaks the moment, and you see a group of men arguing over a spilled basket of figs. The dispute escalates quickly, voices rising, fists clenching. You edge away, careful not to meet anyone's gaze. In this city, being a witness can be as dangerous as being guilty. You pass a row of homes, their walls stained with smoke from countless cooking fires. The ceilings inside are blackened, a testament to years of wood and dung burned for warmth. A child peers out from behind a curtain, eyes wide and curious. You nod, offering a brief smile. Trust is a rare commodity here. A narrow street leads you toward the river, the air cooler, tinged with the scent of water and fish. Fishermen haul in their catch, shouting prices to passing cooks. The river is a lifeline, but also a boundary. Cross it, and you're in another world. It's midday in Baghdad, and you're wedged between a donkey's flank and a merchant's store, sweat prickling your skin as the sun beats down on the souk. The air is thick with the scent of cumin and roasting lamb, but also with the sharp tang of bodies pressed too close for comfort. You try to move forward, but the crowd is a living organism, surging and shifting, carrying you whether you like it or not. Someone's basket knocks your hip, and you nearly lose your footing on a slick patch of olive oil. The din is relentless, vendors barking prices, children laughing, a distant call to prayer threading through the chaos. You're here for bread, but the simple act of buying it is anything but simple. The baker's stall is a fortress of elbows and shouting, his loaves stacked high behind a battered counter. A mutasib stands nearby, eyes narrowed, watching for cheats and troublemakers. You reach for a coin, but the baker snatches it, bites it, and weighs it with exaggerated suspicion. He glances at the mutasib, then at you, as if daring you to challenge his price. The tension is as thick as the bread's crust. Every transaction is a performance, and you're expected to know your lines. If you haggle too little, you're a fool. Too much, and you risk offense, or worse, public humiliation. The woman beside you clucks her tongue, muttering about last week's price. The baker's assistant, a boy barely old enough to reach the counter, rolls his eyes as another customer demands change. You realize that in this market, everyone is watching, and every mistake is remembered. A goat tugs at your sleeve, its owner oblivious as he argues over a sack of dates. The animal's breath is hot and sour, and you jerk your arm away, nearly colliding with a veiled matron balancing a basket of figs. She glares, and you mutter an apology, but she's already swept past, her sandals slapping the dust. You catch a glimpse of a purse dangling from a merchant's belt, easy pickings for a nimble thief. Here, even your belongings are never truly safe. The mutasib's gaze sweeps the crowd, lingering on a group of boys loitering near a spice vendor. He strides over, voice sharp, and the boys scatter, laughter trailing behind them. You feel a prickle of anxiety. One wrong word, one careless gesture, and you could be next under his scrutiny. The rules are unwritten, but everyone knows them. Step out of line, and the consequences are swift. You finally clutch a loaf of bread, its crust warm and fragrant, but your relief is short-lived. The baker leans in, voice low, and warns you to guard it well. Last week, a hungry dog snatched a customer's lunch right from her hands. You glance down, half expecting jaws to clamp onto your prize. The city may be a marvel, but it's also a gauntlet. As you edge away from the stall, the crowd thickens. A silk merchant unfurls a bolt of fabric, its colors dazzling in the sun, and a knot of women descends, voices rising in a chorus of negotiation. The merchant's assistant fans himself, sweat beading on his brow. A sudden shout erupts nearby. Someone's accused of short-changing a customer. You freeze, loaf clutched tight, as the muhtasib storms over. The accused, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers, protests his innocence. The crowd closes in, eager for spectacle. The muhtasib examines the scales, frowning, then pronounces his verdict. The merchant is ordered to repay the difference and offer a public apology. You exhale, heart pounding, grateful it's not you in the spotlight. In Baghdad, justice is swift, and humiliation is public. You slip through a gap between stalls, the press of bodies easing for a moment. The relative quiet is a relief, but it's fleeting. A water seller jingles his brass cups, calling for customers, and a beggar tugs at your sleeve, arm outstretched. The beggar's eyes are sharp, missing nothing. You drop a coin into his hand, hoping to avoid his curse or his gossip. In this city, word travels fast. A gust of wind stirs the dust, and you cough, eyes watering. The city's streets are never clean, and every step leaves grit on your tongue. You pass a butcher's stall, the air thick with the iron scent of blood, and sidestep a puddle of something best left unidentified. A stray cat slinks by, tail high, daring anyone to challenge its claim to a scrap of meat. The city's animals are as bold as its people. You spot a familiar face, a neighbor from your courtyard, basket in hand. He greets you with a nod, eyes darting to the muttasib, then back to you. The exchange is brief, cautious. In Baghdad, even small talk is a dance of alliances and suspicions. You wonder what rumors he's heard, and whether your morning missteps will make the rounds by evening. Reputation is currency here. The sun climbs higher, and the market's energy shifts. Vendors grow sharper, voices more insistent. The crowd thins as the midday heat intensifies, but those who remain are determined. A group of scholars in flowing robes debates philosophy near a bookseller's stall, their words tumbling over each other in a rush. You skirt the edge, wary of being drawn into an argument you can't win. A porter lumbers past, balancing a crate on his back, sweat streaming down his face. The crate wobbles, and for a moment you fear it will topple, scattering its contents across the street. He steadies it with a grunt, shooting you a look that dares you to offer help. You step aside, mindful that even good intentions can backfire here. In Baghdad, every action has consequences. You pause to catch your breath, the city's noise pressing in on all sides. The distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer mingles with the cries of street hawkers. Somewhere nearby, a child wails, and a mother's soothing words are lost in the din. You realize that silence is a rare luxury, and even brief moments of calm are fragile. Your bread is still warm, but your appetite fades as you watch a pair of men argue over a broken jug. Their voices rise, drawing a crowd, and you edge away, not eager to be drawn into their dispute. A passing guard eyes the commotion but moves on, uninterested unless violence erupts. Authority here is selective, and order is always precarious. You duck into the shadow of an awning, grateful for the respite from the sun. The air is cooler, scented with mint and rosewater from a nearby perfumer's stall. The perfumer, a stoic man with stained fingers, measures oil into tiny vials, his movements precise. You watch as a customer sniffs a sample, nods approval, and slips him a coin. Transactions here are both art and strategy. A shrill whistle pierces the air and the crowd tenses. A city official strides past, robes immaculate, flanked by 2 burly attendants. The sea of bodies parts before them, and you shrink back, uncertain whether to make yourself visible or invisible. Power is always on display, and proximity is a risk. The official pauses at a vendor's stall. inspecting wares with practiced indifference. The vendor bows low, voice trembling as he extols the quality of his goods. You sense the tension, the unspoken threat that a single misstep could cost the vendor dearly. In this city, authority is both shield and sword. The crowd begins to flow again, the momentary stillness shattered. You are swept along, pressed between a scholar in flowing robes and a porter balancing a crate. The porter grunts, shifting his load, and the scholar mutters a prayer under his breath. You focus on your footing, acutely aware that a stumble could mean disaster. A sudden commotion erupts ahead. A runaway goat barrels through the market, scattering baskets and upending a stall. Vendors shout, customers leap aside, and the animal disappears into the maze of alleys. You clutch your bread tighter, heart racing. Even the city's chaos has its own rhythm. You find yourself at the edge of the souk, the noise fading as you step into a narrow alley. The air is cooler, shaded by overhanging balconies, but the sense of tension lingers. You pause, pressed between a scholar in flowing robes and a porter balancing a crate, uncertain what fresh ordeal awaits in the next breath. It's midday in the tangled arteries of medieval Baghdad, and you're wedged in a sun-choked alley between a scholar with ink-stained fingers and a porter whose crate smells suspiciously of onions. The air is thick with the scent of sweat and cumin, punctuated by the metallic ring of a distant blacksmith's hammer. Every movement you make is scrutinized, one twitch, and the scholar's eyes narrow, as if you might filch his precious scrolls. The porter grunts, shifting his load, and you realize there's nowhere to go but forward, deeper into the city's pulsing heart. In this city, every gesture is a gamble. The scholar's robe brushes your sleeve, and you freeze, aware that even a friendly nod could be misread as insolence. The porter's brow furrows as you hesitate, his patience thinning with every heartbeat. A vendor's voice cuts through the din, hawking dates in a dialect you barely understand, and you remember that language itself is a minefield. Speak too confidently and you're a braggart, too softly and you're hiding something. The wrong phrase can brand you an outsider before you even reach the end of the street. Baghdad's social web is sticky, and you're already caught. The city's etiquette is a silent code, written in glances and gestures, and you're illiterate. A merchant's apprentice sidesteps you, muttering an apology that sounds more like a warning. You try to mimic the scholar's measured pace, but your sandals scuff the stones, drawing attention from a pair of boys chasing a stray chicken. One laughs, the other points, and suddenly you're the spectacle. Every silence is loaded, every word is a risk. You slip into a shadowed alcove, hoping for a moment's reprieve. The alley is barely wide enough for two, but three of you are pressed together, breathing the same dusty air. The scholar's perfume, rosewater and old parchment, mingles with the porter's sour sweat. Somewhere overhead, a woman pours water from a window, splashing the cobblestones and nearly dousing your feet. The city's rhythm is relentless, and there's no pause button. You consider greeting the scholar, but etiquette here is a labyrinth. If you greet him first, you risk overstepping your station. If you wait, you might seem rude or suspicious. The scholar glances at you, eyebrow raised, and the porter shifts again, impatient. You nod, aiming for polite neutrality, but the scholar's lips tighten, The moment passes, but the tension lingers, sticky as the heat. A shout erupts from the far end of the alley. Two men argue over a spilled basket of figs, voices rising above the city's usual hum. You edge away, but the porter blocks your path, muttering about the price of bread. The scholar sighs, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. You realize that in Baghdad, even a simple apology can be a trap. If you admit fault, you might owe compensation. If you deny it, you risk escalation. The city's unwritten rules are everywhere. A woman in a blue veil passes, eyes downcast, and you remember not to stare. A beggar tugs at your sleeve, palm outstretched, and you hesitate, give too much, and you invite a crowd, give too little, and you risk offense. Every choice is a calculation, every moment a test. The alley feels narrower with each passing second. You finally break free, stumbling into the chaos of the main bazaar. The noise is deafening, vendors shouting, donkeys braying, the distant call to prayer threading through it all. The air is thick with the smell of roasting lamb and the sharp tang of vinegar. A cluster of men debate the price of silk, voices overlapping in a swirl of Arabic and Persian. You catch only fragments, but the urgency is unmistakable. You edge toward a stall piled high with dates, hoping for a safe purchase. The merchant eyes you, weighing your clothes, your accent, your hesitation. He offers a price, and you hesitate, unsure if it's fair or a test. Haggling is expected, but too much back, and forth marks you as either a miser or a fool. You settle on a number, hand over your coins, and the merchant's smile is thin. In Baghdad, even a simple transaction is a performance. As you pocket your change, a city guard strides past, his gaze sweeping the crowd. The merchant's posture stiffens, and you sense a ripple of unease. The guard's presence is a reminder. Order here is enforced, but not always fairly. One complaint from a local, and you could find yourself answering questions you don't understand. In this city, your safety is never guaranteed. You duck behind a spice cart, the air suddenly pungent with cinnamon and cardamom. The merchant grumbles, waving you away, but you linger, savoring a moment of relative anonymity. A child brushes past, fingers nimble, and you check your pouch, still there, but only just. Pickpockets are as common as pigeons here, and you're an obvious target. The city's paranoia is contagious. You catch yourself glancing over your shoulder, scanning faces for signs of trouble. A man in a green turban watches you too closely, and you move on, heart thumping. In Baghdad, anyone could be watching. Anyone could be listening. The city's secrets are guarded by suspicion and whispered rumors. You slip into a narrow side street hoping for quiet. The noise fades, replaced by the soft clatter of pottery and the distant bleat of a goat. The street is lined with shuttered windows, and you feel every eye behind them. A door creaks open, and a woman sweeps dust into the gutter, her gaze flicking over you before she disappears inside. Privacy is a luxury here, and you have none. You pause at a well, tempted by the promise of cool water. A line has already formed, women with clay jars, a boy with a battered bucket, an old man muttering prayers. You join the queue, trying to blend in. A sharp word from the well-keeper reminds you that strangers are watched, and every action is subject to judgment. The water is clear, but the risk is muddy. You finally reach the front, dipping your hands into the basin. The water is cold, shockingly clean, but you hesitate. A woman behind you coughs, and you sense impatience mounting. You drink quickly, aware that lingering too long could be seen as disrespectful. In Baghdad, even thirst is political. You step away from the well, wiping your hands on your tunic. The old man mutters something about outsiders, and you catch the word foreigner. You move on, pulse quickening, the city's suspicion pressing in from all sides. Every interaction is a negotiation, every silence a potential accusation. You duck into a shaded courtyard, hoping for a moment's peace. The space is cool, the air scented with jasmine and dust. A cat slinks by, tail high, and you envy its confidence. A group of women gossip in low voices, glancing your way. You sit on a low wall, pretending not to listen, but you catch fragments of conversation, complaints about taxes, rumors of a merchant's arrest. The sun beats down on the tangled streets of medieval Baghdad, and you, a stranger with a dry tongue, stumble past a row of crumbling brick walls and the shouts of a copper cellar. Even the shadows are hot here. Sweat beads at your brow, but the air is thick with the smell of roasting meat, dust, and something sharper. Maybe vinegar, maybe sewage. The city is alive with noise. Donkey hooves clatter. Children scream. A muezzin's call slices the air. You'd give anything for a drink, but every jug you see seems to carry a warning stitched into its glaze. You spot a water vendor, his cart stacked with clay cups and a battered amphora. The man grins, showing a row of gold teeth, and dips a ladle into his jug. You hesitate, remembering tales of waterborne curses and the invisible things that swim in the Kanat channels below the city. The cup he hands you is cool, but the water tastes of earth and something metallic. You swallow anyway, because thirst is a more immediate threat than superstition. The vendor watches you too closely, as if waiting for a reaction. A group of boys dart past, nearly knocking the cup from your hand. You clutch it tighter, suddenly aware of how exposed you are. The street is a river of bodies, each person pressed close, each face a mask of suspicion or indifference. Somewhere nearby, a woman pours water from a rooftop cistern, and the droplets sparkle as they fall, lost in the dust before they hit the ground. You wonder how many hands have touched that water, how many secrets it carries. Canals and underground channels, you've heard, are the city's lifeblood, channels dug beneath the streets, bringing water from upstream. But lifeblood can clot. The same tunnels that feed the city also hide rats, refuse, and the occasional body. You imagine what else might drift beneath your feet, unseen and unspoken. In this city, the ground itself seems to whisper warnings. You duck into a shaded alley, hoping for relief from the press of the crowd. Here, the air is cooler, but it stinks of stagnant water and rotting vegetables. A cat slinks past, licking its lips. You glance up and see a narrow spout protruding from a wall, trickling water into a cracked basin. You reach for it, but a wiry old man blocks your way with a broom. "That's not for you," he mutters, eyes darting to the street. You back away, pulse quickening. Everywhere you turn, water is rationed, guarded or suspect. The city's wealthy have their own wells, hidden behind heavy doors and guarded by servants. The poor make do with what they can steal or scavenge. You pass a boy selling brackish water in chipped cups, his hands stained with grime. He shouts prices, but his eyes never meet yours. Trust is a luxury you can't afford. You try to remember which fountains are safe, if any. Some are marked with blue tiles, others with faded script. A local man once told you to avoid water near the tanneries, unless you want to glow in the dark. The advice rings in your ears as you skirt a puddle that smells of lie and death. Your throat aches, but your sense of self-preservation aches more. A sudden commotion jolts you from your thoughts. Two men argue over a broken jug, voices rising above the din. One accuses the other of poisoning the water. The crowd draws back, leaving a circle of dust and tension. You edge away, realizing that even a sip can spark violence here. The city's thirst is matched only by its suspicion. You duck into a courtyard, hoping for quiet. The walls are cool to the touch, and a fig tree casts a patch of shade. A woman fills a clay jar from a small fountain, her movements careful, almost ritualistic. She glances at you, then at the gate, as if weighing whether to offer you a drink or call for help. You nod politely and move on, the silence pressing in. Breather. In Baghdad, even a simple drink is a test of your instincts and your luck. You step back onto the street, the noise swelling around you. Every solution here seems to open a new problem. The more you search for safety, the more you realize how little you understand the city's rules. You follow the sound of running water, hoping it leads somewhere safer. Instead, you find a public fountain crowded with men in dusty robes, each jostling for space. The water here is clear, but the crowd is thick with tension. A bearded man glares as you approach, his hand resting on a heavy stick. You decide not to press your luck. You circle the fountain, searching for another way. The city's layout is a maze, designed to confuse outsiders and protect insiders. You catch glimpses of tiled courtyards, locked gates, and shaded balconies. Everywhere you sense eyes watching from behind screens and doorways. In Baghdad, privacy is precious, but secrecy is currency. A sudden hush falls over the street as a patrol of city guards passes. Their sandals slap the stones, swords glinting in the sun. People step aside, heads bowed. The guards carry water flasks at their belts, but you know better than to ask for a favor. In this city, authority is both shield and threat. You slip down a side street, the dust swirling at your feet. Here, the air is thick with the smell of baking bread and the distant tang of sweat. A child offers you a handful of dates, sticky with syrup. You trade a coin, but the transaction is wordless, tense. Even kindness feels transactional here. Breather. The city's generosity is always measured against its suspicions. You pass a row of shuttered shops, their doors painted with strange symbols. Some are wards against evil, others warnings to outsiders. You study them, but their meanings slip through your fingers like water. You pause at a mosaic fountain, its tiles chipped and faded. The water glimmers, but a dead bird floats near the spout. You turn away, stomach twisting. In Baghdad, beauty and danger often share the same space. The line between the two is as thin as a shadow. You hear laughter from a nearby doorway. Inside, a group of men share a jug of wine, their voices low and conspiratorial. You wonder if their water is any safer, or if the drink is just a way to forget the risks. In this city, even pleasure is tinged with anxiety. A merchant calls to you from his stall, offering rose water in tiny glass bottles. The scent is intoxicating, but the price is steep. You consider buying some, if only to mask the city's harsher smells. But your coin purse is lighter than you'd like, and you move on, senses sharpened. It's late afternoon in Baghdad, and you slip through the narrow archway of the hammam, the city's bathhouse, desperate for a moment's escape from the chaos outside. The air here is thick with steam that clings to your skin, and the tiled walls amplify every murmur and splash until it feels like you're standing in the middle of a boiling kettle. Your sandals slap against the slick floor, drawing glances from men lounging on benches, their eyes sharp with curiosity and calculation. The scent of rosewater barely masks the underlying tang of sweat and old secrets. Even in this haven, you're reminded that privacy is a luxury you can't afford. A young attendant hands you a rough linen towel, his gaze lingering a moment too long before he disappears into the haze. The heat presses in, making your pulse thud in your ears as you settle on a warm stone slab. Conversations swirl around you, some in low, conspiratorial tones, others erupting in laughter that never quite reaches the eyes. Here, every word is a potential weapon, and the wrong phrase can echo far beyond these walls. You hear a name whispered, a local merchant accused of cheating weights. The room falls silent for a heartbeat, then resumes its careful chatter, as if nothing happened. You try to relax, but the hammam's embrace is a double-edged sword. The steam softens your muscles, but it also blurs the line between friend and foe. A stranger leans closer, his breath hot against your cheek, and asks if you've heard the latest about a city notable. You know better than to answer. In Baghdad, rumors travel faster than the Tigris, and a careless tongue can cost you more than your reputation. You nod non-committally, eyes fixed on the swirling patterns in the tiles, hoping your silence won't be interpreted as guilt. The attendant returns, this time bearing a wooden bucket of water and a bar of olive soap. He scrubs your back with brisk efficiency, but his questions keep coming. Where are you from? Who do you know? What brings you here today? You sense the stakes rising with each inquiry. In this city, everyone is both a potential ally and a possible informant. The wrong answer could draw the attention of authorities, or worse, the interest of those who thrive on others' misfortune. The walls seem to close in, the steam growing thicker, as if the very air conspires to wring secrets from you. A sudden shout from the far end of the room jolts you upright. Two men argue over a debt, voices sharp and brittle in the humid air. The attendant tenses, eyes darting between the combatants and the door, calculating whether to intervene or slip away. You shrink back, keenly aware that violence here is rarely private and never forgotten. In the city's labyrinth of alliances, even a minor scuffle can spiral into a blood feud. The argument ends as abruptly as it began, the tension lingering like a sour note. You towel off, eager to leave, but the exit is blocked by a knot of men deep in conversation. Their robes brush against yours as they pass, and you catch snatches of talk about taxes, conscription, and the ever-shifting demands of those in power. You recall hearing that authorities can raise taxes or conscript labor at a moment's notice. The fear is palpable, woven into every exchange. You realize that even in a place meant for cleansing, you're never truly safe from the city's reach. Outside the hammam, the air feels cool and sharp, cutting through the lingering heat on your skin. The street is alive with noise, vendors hawking fruit, donkeys braying, children darting between carts. You're cleaner, but every step reminds you how exposed you are. The dust clings to your damp skin, and the eyes of the city follow you, always searching for a weakness. You move quickly, blending into the crowd, hoping anonymity will shield you from the next ordeal. A sudden commotion draws your attention to a nearby alley where a group of city guards drags a man out by his arms. The crowd parts, watching in tense silence as the guards march him away. You've heard stories of swift justice in Baghdad, where a single accusation can end in exile, or worse. The city's laws are as changeable as its river, and mercy is rarely part of the equation. You avert your gaze, heart pounding, and slip away before anyone can notice your interest. As you wind through the marketplace, the scents of spices and roasting meat mix with the sour tang of sweat and livestock. A merchant tries to draw you in with promises of rare goods, but you keep your head down. Every transaction is a negotiation, and every word spoken in public is a risk. You remember the hush that fell in the hammam after that merchant's name was mentioned. The lesson is clear. In Baghdad, the walls have ears, and the streets have eyes. You duck into a shaded courtyard, hoping for a moment's respite. The cool stone under your feet is a relief, but the quiet here is unnerving. A woman in a faded robe sweeps the flagstones, her gaze flicking up as you enter. She says nothing, but her silence feels heavy, as if she's weighing your worth with every glance. Even in private spaces, trust is scarce. You sense that any misstep could follow you for days, resurfacing when you least expect it. The call to prayer floats over the rooftops, a haunting melody that briefly unites the city in purpose. For a moment, the tension eases, replaced by the rhythmic murmur of devotion. But as the echoes fade, the city's anxieties return, sharper than before. You realize that every attempt at relief, every bath, every prayer, every pause, only makes you more aware of the dangers lurking just beyond the next corner. The cycle of suspicion and exposure never truly ends. A boy runs past, nearly knocking you off balance, and vanishes into the maze of alleys. You steady yourself, heart racing, and glance around to see if anyone noticed. A group of older men watches from a doorway, their conversation pausing as you pass. You feel their scrutiny like a weight, pressing you forward. In Baghdad, being noticed is rarely a good thing. You quicken your pace, the city's pulse thrumming in your ears. You pass a cluster of men debating the latest edict from the caliph's palace. Their voices are low, but their words carry taxes, conscription, the threat of sudden change. You remember the fear in the hammam when these topics surfaced. The city's rulers can upend lives with a whim, and no one is too small to escape notice. The sense of insecurity is constant, a background hum that never quite fades. A sudden hush falls as a veiled figure strides through the square, flanked by attendants. The crowd parts, heads bowed, and you sense the presence of someone important. The air crackles with anticipation, and you realize how quickly the city's mood can shift from noisy chaos to tense silence. In this moment, you're reminded that power here is always visible, always watching. The stakes rise with every passing hour. You slip into a narrow lane, the walls closing in on either side. The shadows are deep, and the only sound is your own breathing. A stray cat darts across your path, startling you into a run. The city's maze of alleys is both refuge and trap, offering escape, but also hiding unseen dangers. You slow your pace, listening for footsteps behind you, aware that in Baghdad, paranoia is just another survival tool. A distant drumbeat signals the approach of evening, and the city's energy shifts. Vendors pack up their stalls, and the crowds thin, replaced by figures moving with purpose. You feel the day's tension settle into your bones, a reminder that every choice carries weight. The hammam's steam has faded, but the sense of exposure lingers. You wonder how anyone manages to find peace in a city so alive with risk. Night in medieval Baghdad is a living thing, and you are caught in its jaws as the last echo of the call to prayer disappears over the rooftops. The city's heat lingers, pressed between the mud-brick walls and the hard-packed earth beneath your sandals. The air is thick with the smell of old cooking oil, sweat, and the faint metallic tang of fear. You keep to the main street, where the flicker of oil lamps reveals more shadows than faces. Every step you take is measured, deliberate, as if the stones themselves are watching. The shurta, the city watch, move in pairs, their sandals slapping softly in the gloom. You can hear them before you see them, their low voices cutting through the hush. Their torches cast long, twitching shadows that seem to chase you down the lane. If you stray too far from the light, you risk being mistaken for a thief, or worse, a spy. In this city, a single accusation is all it takes to ruin your night, or your life. A sudden shout from a side alley makes your heart leap into your throat. The sound is sharp, urgent, and you freeze, pressed against a cool wall. For a moment, the only thing you can hear is your own breath, ragged and loud in your ears. The shurta rush past, drawn by the noise, and you are left standing in the uncertain dark. The city feels smaller now, its alleys tighter and its shadows deeper. You edge forward, careful to keep your footsteps soft. Each doorway you pass is a possible den of thieves, or a hiding place for someone with a grudge. The laws here are clear, but justice is often a matter of who yells first. If someone were to cry out, "Thieves," right now, you would have no defense except your wits and your feet. The stakes are simple: survive the night, or become its next cautionary tale. A woman in a faded blue robe appears ahead, her face half hidden beneath a veil. She glances at you, then away, moving quickly to the other side of the street. Trust is a rare commodity after dark. You keep your eyes down, hoping to appear harmless, but you know that suspicion clings to strangers like dust. In Baghdad, everyone is a potential informant, and secrets are traded as eagerly as spices. The marketplace looks different now. its stalls shuttered and silent. The day's chaos has been replaced by a tense, expectant hush. You catch the scent of rotting fruit and stale bread, mingled with the musk of animals penned for the night. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks, then falls silent. The city's pulse slows, but it never truly sleeps. You pass a group of men gathered around a low table, their voices hushed but urgent. One glances up as you approach, his eyes narrowing. You keep moving, resisting the urge to look back. In the darkness, every conversation could be a conspiracy, and every gathering a threat. You wonder if they are discussing taxes or plotting something riskier. Taxes in Baghdad are as unpredictable as the river's moods. The authorities can raise them without warning, and there is little recourse for protest. If you are unlucky, you might find yourself conscripted for labor, repairing the city's walls or dredging the canals. Tonight, you remember stories of neighbors vanishing after a knock at the door, their debts unpaid or their loyalty questioned. The city's peace is fragile, always at risk of shattering. A distant clang of metal makes you flinch. The Shurta are searching someone's home, their voices carrying in the still air. You pick up your pace, eager to put distance between yourself and the trouble. Your sandals kick up dust, and you choke on the dryness. The taste of fear lingers on your tongue, sour and persistent. You duck into a narrow alley, hoping to find a shortcut home. The air here is cooler, heavy with the smell of damp earth and old urine. The walls are close, their surfaces slick with grime. You move quickly, but your footsteps echo, betraying your presence. A cat darts across your path, its eyes glowing in the faint light. For a moment, you envy its confidence. You emerge into a small courtyard, its flagstones worn smooth by generations of feet. The moonlight reveals a cluster of clay jars, their surfaces streaked with soot. Somewhere above, a window creaks open, and you sense eyes watching. In Baghdad, privacy is an illusion. Even at night, you are never truly alone. A sudden gust of wind stirs the dust, carrying with it the distant sound of laughter. For a heartbeat, the tension breaks, replaced by a fleeting sense of normalcy. But the moment passes, and the city's vigilance returns. You remind yourself that safety is always temporary here. One careless word, one misplaced glance, and you could find yourself at the mercy of the authorities. The memory of a friend's warning echoes in your mind. Never trust a quiet street after dark. You grip the pouch at your belt, feeling the reassuring weight of a few copper coins. Money is no guarantee of safety, but it can buy you a little time. You keep moving, eyes scanning every shadow for movement. A figure steps out from a doorway ahead, blocking your path. He is tall, his face hidden by a hood, and his stance is unmistakably hostile. You stop, heart pounding, and weigh your options. Fight, flee, or try to talk your way past. In Baghdad, hesitation can be fatal. You force yourself to speak, voice steady but low. The man studies you for a moment, then steps aside, vanishing into the darkness. Relief floods your limbs, but you do not slow down. Encounters like this are common, and you know better than to linger. Every night is a test, and the city is always watching. You reach the edge of the marketplace, where the smell of spices still clings to the air. The stalls are empty, but the sense of commerce lingers, a reminder that life here is built on trade and negotiation. You pass a pile of discarded baskets, their contents picked clean by the day's last customers. Even the refuse has its own story. A child's cry pierces the silence, quickly muffled. You glance toward the sound, but see nothing. In Baghdad, the night belongs to those who know how to disappear. You keep your head down, moving with purpose. The city's rules are unwritten, but everyone learns them quickly. You skirt around a puddle, the water reflecting the moonlight in fractured patterns. The ground is uneven, and you stumble, catching yourself on a low wall. The stone is cool beneath your hand, grounding you for a moment. You take a breath, steadying your nerves, then push on. The night is far from over. You hear the distant call of a muezzin, softer now, as if reminding the city to behave. The sound weaves through the alleys, settling over the rooftops like a blanket. For a moment you feel a strange sense of belonging, as if you are part of something larger. But the feeling fades, replaced by the familiar itch of anxiety. It is late evening in Baghdad, and you're standing outside the House of Wisdom, pressed against cool stone as candlelight flickers behind latticed windows. The air hums with a chorus of distant prayers, punctuated by the slap of sandals and the sharp calls of a fruit vendor closing shop. You're not alone. A cluster of students huddle nearby, clutching scrolls as if they were shields. The scent of ink and old parchment drifts through the doorway, mingling with the sharper tang of sweat and lamp oil. You hesitate, knowing that one careless word here could echo much further than the city walls. Inside, the House of Wisdom is a world apart from the chaos outside. You step through the archway and are swallowed by a hush, so complete it's almost unnerving. Scholars in long robes murmur over tables littered with diagrams and treatises, their voices low and urgent. A scribe glances up, eyes flicking over you, then returns to his calculations. You notice the guards at the entrance, hands resting on their hilts, watching for trouble in a place supposedly devoted to peace. You edge closer to a table where a physician debates the merits of a new herbal remedy. The words are dense, the arguments sharper than any blade. A scholar's voice rises, challenging a long-held belief about the stars. A few heads turn, and the tension thickens. You realize that here, ideas are currency, but the wrong investment can bankrupt you in more ways than one. The room smells of beeswax and nervous anticipation. You try to look invisible, but curiosity marks you out. A student thrusts a scroll into your hands, daring you to read. The script is elegant but unfamiliar, and your heart pounds as you fumble for the meaning. You recall that in this city, knowledge is power, but power is always watched. The scholar beside you leans in, whispering, "Careful, some questions are better left unasked." You nod, but your eyes linger on a page filled with diagrams of the human body. The urge to ask burns, but so does the memory of stories about those who asked too much. The debate grows heated, voices clashing like swords. You edge backward, nearly stumbling into a shelf of scrolls. A guard's gaze lands on you, and you freeze, the weight of his suspicion pressing down. He moves on, but your skin prickles as you realize how thin the line is between scholar and heretic. The candlelight seems harsher now, throwing long shadows across the tiled floor. Every word spoken here is a risk, and you're keenly aware that you're a stranger in this world. A ripple of laughter breaks the tension, but it's brittle, like glass ready to shatter. Someone mentions a physician who was banished for questioning the wrong doctrine. The others fall silent, eyes darting to the door. You sense that the house of wisdom is both sanctuary and snare. The promise of discovery is real, but so is the threat of ruin. You grip the scroll tighter, feeling sweat bead on your palms. A scholar gestures to you, inviting you to join a discussion on mathematics. The numbers swirl before your eyes, symbols dancing in the candlelight. You nod along, hoping your silence won't betray ignorance or, worse, dissent. The conversation veers into forbidden territory, a method that contradicts accepted wisdom. The group leans in, voices dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You realize you're caught in a web of secrets, each thread a potential noose. The air grows stifling as the discussion deepens. You feel every eye on you, weighing your reactions. A sudden shout from the courtyard outside jolts everyone. The scholars stiffen, and one quietly slides a controversial text out of sight. The tension lingers even after the commotion fades. You understand now that in Baghdad, knowledge is a double-edged sword, and the blade is always close. You excuse yourself, stepping out into the courtyard where the air is thick with jasmine and dust. The city's noise rushes back in, a donkey brays, a child laughs, a distant argument flares. You're not safe yet. The House of Wisdom's reputation draws both admirers and informants. You glance over your shoulder, half expecting a shadow to detach itself from the wall. The night feels heavier, as if the city itself is eavesdropping. You try to steady your breath, but your mind races with what you've heard. If you repeat the wrong detail, you risk more than embarrassment. In this city, rumors are currency, and a careless tongue can cost you everything. The call to prayer rises, echoing off the domes and minarets, reminding you how public and how vulnerable you are. You slip into a side street, hoping anonymity will shield you. A merchant blocks your path, demanding to know what you carry. You clutch the scroll, heart pounding, and mumble something about errands for a scholar. The merchant eyes you, then shrugs, distracted by a dispute over weights and measures. You remember that even shopkeepers here are watched for honesty, their scales subject to sudden inspection. The city is a labyrinth of rules, and you're always one misstep from disaster. You duck into a shadowed alcove, trying to gather your thoughts. The sounds of the city press in, vendors haggling, water splashing into a trough, the distant clang of metalwork. You realize that even knowledge, so prized in Baghdad, comes with invisible chains. Every insight must be weighed against the risk of offending the wrong patron or crossing an unseen line. The House of Wisdom promises enlightenment, but the cost is constant vigilance. A group of students passes, their voices low, as they debate a passage from a philosopher. One glances at you, eyes narrowing, then turns away. You feel exposed, as if your curiosity is painted across your forehead. The city's energy is relentless, and you're swept along by its current, whether you want to be or not. You clutch the scroll tighter, the paper warm from your grip. You find a quiet corner near a fountain, hoping for a moment's peace. The water's trickle is soothing, but your nerves remain taut. You wonder if the next question you ask will be your last. In Baghdad, every conversation is a balancing act, and every silence is loaded with meaning. The House of Wisdom's glow fades behind you, but its dangers linger like the dust in your throat. You try to recall the faces of those you met inside, who seemed friendly, who watched too closely. A sudden gust scatters a pile of parchment at your feet, and you scramble to gather them before anyone notices. The smallest mistake here is magnified, and you feel the city's gaze on your back. The night deepens, and the streets grow emptier, but your sense of unease only sharpens. A distant shout signals a patrol passing, their torches bobbing like fireflies. You flatten yourself against a wall, heart hammering as they march past. The city's order is maintained by constant surveillance, and you're never truly alone. You realize that even in the pursuit of wisdom, you're subject to the whims of those in power. The promise of knowledge is always shadowed by the threat of punishment. You slip through a narrow alley, the walls closing in around you. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meat and burning lamp oil. You hear a snatch of conversation about a scholar who vanished after a heated debate. The story chills you, a reminder that in Baghdad, even the brightest minds can disappear without a trace. You move faster, eager to put distance between yourself and the House of Wisdom. A stray cat darts across your path, startling you. The city is alive with secrets, and every shadow seems to hide a watcher. You clutch the scroll, wondering if it's a key or a curse. The House of Wisdom promised answers, but all you found are more questions. The city's pulse quickens, and you're swept along, caught between curiosity and caution. You reach your lodging, breathless and shaken. The door creaks as you slip inside, the familiar smells of bread and herbs grounding you. You hide the scroll beneath your mattress, unsure if it's safer there or back at the House of Wisdom. The night is quiet, but your mind races, replaying every word, every glance, every risk taken. In Baghdad, safety is always temporary. You're doubled over in the shadow of a narrow alley, midday sun shimmering off clay walls, when a cough claws its way up your throat and refuses to leave. The street behind you is a living river of sandals, donkey carts, and the endless drone of merchants hawking figs and dates. Each breath tastes of dust, smoke, and a faint tang of livestock. You try to swallow, but your throat burns. In medieval Baghdad, illness is often your own problem until it becomes everyone else's. It's midday in Baghdad, and the sun is a white-hot coin pressed against the sky as the zakat collector steps into your street. His tunic crisp, his eyes sharper than the blade at his hip. The collector is not alone. Two broad-shouldered men flank him, their arms folded, while a scribe trails behind, clutching a wooden tablet and ink. Your neighbors lean out of doorways and windows, faces hungry for spectacle, as if the mere whiff of tax drama is enough to flavor their noon meal. The city's usual clamor, vendors shouting, donkeys braying, children darting, seems to hush, replaced by a brittle tension. You feel the weight of every gaze, the air thick with dust and anticipation. You know the script. The collector's sandals slap against the flagstones, his enforcers scanning for any sign of defiance. And the scribe's stylus hovers, ready to immortalize your stammer or hesitation. You clutch your coin pouch, damp with sweat, and try to remember if you've misplaced a single dinar since last market day. The collector's voice is dry as old parchment as he asks for your tally, leaving no room for small talk. You recite your numbers, heart pounding, and his eyebrow arches, a silent dare to slip, to falter. The scribe's pen scratches, every stroke a possible threat. In medieval Baghdad, taxes are not a paperwork nuisance. They are a public trial, a test of memory and nerve. The collector's gaze lingers on your home's low doorway and the battered sandals at your feet, weighing your story for cracks. A missing coin is not a minor oversight. It is an accusation waiting to bloom, and your neighbors are eager witnesses. Someone coughs, and the collector's enforcer shifts his weight, the movement deliberate and heavy. The crowd senses a possible misstep. You offer your coins, each one clinking against the collector's scale, and the scribe nods, marking your payment. But the collector's eyes flick to the small basket of dates by your door. "Is this all?" he asks, tone flat. You hesitate, and the scribe's pen pauses in the air, a bead of ink trembling at the tip. The collector's enforcers step forward, their presence suddenly filling the narrow street. You realize that even a gift from a neighbor could be counted as income if the collector decides it so. In this city, the walls have ears, and the ears have sharp tongues. The collector's scrutiny is relentless, and your neighbor's silence is loaded with meaning. You recall stories of a merchant whose missing coin turned into a week in the city jail. The collector's hand hovers over your remaining coins, and for a moment, you wonder if he will take more than his share. The scribe's eyes dart from you to the crowd, waiting for a protest or a slip. The air is thick with the scent of sweat and old stone. You manage to keep your voice steady, explaining the dates were a wedding gift, not a taxable good. The collector considers, then waves a hand, and his enforcers step back, just a little. The scribe records the outcome, but you sense the collector's memory is long and his patience short. The crowd's interest fades, replaced by the usual market noise, but you feel the aftershock in your bones. In plain words, a single hesitation could have cost you your freedom. You step back into your home, the door creaking on its hinges, and let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. The ceiling is low and streaked with soot from last night's lamp, a reminder that even here, privacy is an illusion. The walls are thin, and every word spoken inside can leak out into the alley. You hear the collector's voice outside, already sizing up the next household. The threat lingers like the taste of dust in your mouth. You glance at your meager possessions, calculating what could be seized if the collector returns in a less forgiving mood. In medieval Baghdad, property is never truly yours. It's on loan from fate, and fate answers to men with ledgers and muscle. The memory of a neighbor's confiscated rug, lifted from his floor in front of the whole block, makes you shiver. You tuck your coins deeper into their hiding place, knowing that cleverness is your only shield. The air inside feels close, thick with the residue of fear. Outside, the market resumes its chaotic rhythm. The scent of cumin and roasting lamb drifts in, mingling with the sharper tang of sweat and animal dung. You hear a woman haggling with a date seller, her voice sharp, her laughter forced. The city's pulse is relentless, each beat a reminder that the next crisis is always just around the corner. You move to the window, careful not to draw attention, and watch the collector's entourage disappear into the crowd. The relief is fleeting. You remember the stories whispered after dark, how a careless word or an unpaid debt could draw the wrong eyes. In this city, anyone could be listening. The mosque's call to prayer rings out, echoing off stone and clay, momentarily drowning the market's noise. The sound is both a comfort and a warning. Even the sacred is not immune to the city's surveillance. You wonder if the collector will return next month, or if your name is now marked in the scribe's ledger as a potential risk. You try to busy yourself with chores, sweeping the courtyard and tending the small herb pots by the wall. The scent of mint and coriander almost masks the underlying musk of the street. Every so often, a neighbor passes by, offering a nod or a quick word, but their eyes linger too long on your door. You sense that your performance during the collector's visit will be discussed over bread and tea tonight. The city's gossip is a living thing, and you are now part of its meal. As the afternoon wears on, the sun shifts, casting long shadows across the courtyard. You pause, listening for any sign of the collector's return, but hear only the distant clatter of pots and the low hum of conversation. You relax just a little, but the memory of the encounter clings to your skin. In plain terms, your status in the neighborhood now hangs by a thread. You wonder how anyone survives this endless scrutiny. You notice the soot stains on your ceiling, a silent testament to countless smoky evenings. The city's air is thick with dust and the residue of 1,000 cooking fires. Even the wealthier homes in Baghdad bear the same scars. Smoke is a great equalizer, marking every ceiling and every lung. You cough, and the sound echoes in the small room, a reminder that comfort is always tinged with hardship. You move to the courtyard, hoping for a breeze, but the air is heavy and still. The city's noise presses in from all sides, vendors hawking wares, children shrieking, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. You close your eyes, trying to imagine a day without anxiety, but the city will not let you forget your place. The stakes are simple. One wrong move, and you could lose everything. You hear a commotion at the end of the street. A donkey has broken loose, scattering baskets and curses in its wake. The distraction is welcome, a brief reprieve from your own worries. You watch as neighbors chase after the animal, laughter and shouts filling the air. The city's chaos is both a shield and a threat, hiding you in plain sight while also exposing you to every passing danger. You realize that survival here is a constant negotiation. As dusk approaches, the city's energy shifts. The heat softens, and lanterns flicker to life in doorways and windows. The smell of bread baking mingles with the sharper notes of sweat and smoke. You step outside, drawn by the promise of cooler air, but the street is still crowded, every face a possible witness or informant. The collector may be gone, but his shadow lingers. In plain speech, your safety is never guaranteed. You stand in the shadow of a crumbling courtyard wall, the call to prayer echoing from the nearby mosque as dusk settles over Baghdad. The air is thick with the scent of cumin and wood smoke. but your attention is fixed on the figure of the mosque's warden, his eyes scanning the faces that cross his domain. You keep your head low, footsteps light, not daring to linger. As a dhimmi, one of the city's tolerated non-Muslims, your right to worship is protected, at least in theory. One careless glance or an overheard sigh could shift your entire standing in the blink of an eye. The city's famed tolerance is a delicate thing, as fragile as the oil lamps flickering along the colonnade. You know the rules: no public displays, no processions, no loud celebrations. Your prayers must be quiet, your gatherings discreet. The warden's gaze lingers on a group of men near the entrance, their robes marked by a color reserved for your community. You feel the weight of invisible lines drawn through the city, separating what is permitted from what is merely endured. You slip past the courtyard, heart pounding, as a group of children chase each other through the dust. Their laughter is sharp, almost mocking, and you wonder if they recognize your difference. The alleys here twist and narrow, forcing bodies close. Every brush of a shoulder or accidental nudge is a silent negotiation, a reminder that your presence is conditional. The market's clamor rises behind you, but here, in the half-light, suspicion is the loudest sound. The mosque's warden turns away, distracted by a merchant unloading baskets of figs. You exhale, but the relief is short-lived. A woman in a faded scarf glances at you, then at the mosque, her lips pressed tight. You remember the stories, how a single accusation, true or not, can draw the attention of the authorities. The city's tolerance is a balancing act, and you are always one misstep from the wrong side. You duck into a narrow passage, the walls close enough to scrape your elbows. The stones are cool, the air tinged with the scent of stale bread and sweat. In this part of the city, everyone knows who belongs and who is merely tolerated. A man selling lamp oil nods as you pass, but his eyes linger a moment too long. You wonder if he's memorizing your face, or simply bored. The passage opens onto a small courtyard, shaded by a lone date palm. Here, the sounds of the city are muffled, a rare pocket of calm. You allow yourself a moment to breathe, but the tension never fully leaves your shoulders. Even in this quiet, you know that walls have ears. A servant sweeps the flagstones, glancing up with a look you can't decipher. You keep your hands visible, your movements measured. You hear the distant clang of a metal pot, followed by the low murmur of voices. Somewhere nearby, a family gathers for the evening meal. The aroma of stewed lentils drifts on the breeze, mingling with the sharper scent of vinegar. You're reminded of your own home, where meals are quieter, shadows longer, and laughter always a little too cautious. The city's rhythm is relentless, and you are always just a beat behind. A group of men cross the courtyard, their conversation clipped and hurried. You catch fragments, taxes, a magistrate's ruling, a neighbor's misfortune. Every word is weighed, every gesture calculated. You keep your eyes on the ground, careful not to draw attention. In Baghdad, even silence can be suspicious if it's the wrong kind. A sudden shout from the street makes you flinch. Two boys dart past, one clutching a stolen loaf. The baker's curses follow them, but the crowd quickly swallows the commotion. You feel the city's pulse, fast, unpredictable, always on the edge of eruption. The lesson is simple: blend in, or risk being noticed for the wrong reasons. The courtyard empties as the last rays of sunlight slip behind the rooftops. You move toward the far gate, mindful of the shadows gathering in the corners. The city's architecture is a maze, designed as much for defense as for confusion. You navigate by habit, counting doorways and listening for familiar voices. A stray dog noses through a pile of refuse, its ribs sharp beneath matted fur. The animal glances at you with wary eyes, then slinks away. You understand the feeling, always alert, always searching for a safe place to rest. The city offers no guarantees, only brief respites between dangers. You reach the edge of the courtyard, pausing to let a group of laborers pass. Their tunics are stained, their faces marked by sun and worry. One of them mutters a greeting, but you sense the distance in his tone. In Baghdad, every interaction is a test of boundaries. The wrong word, the wrong accent, and you become the subject of whispered conversations. A drum beats from the direction of the city's main gate, signaling the closing of the market. The streets begin to empty, the noise fading to a low hum. You quicken your pace, eager to reach the safety of your home before night falls. The city is less forgiving in the dark. You pass a row of shuttered stalls, the scent of spices lingering in the air. The wooden doors are carved with patterns that catch the fading light, but you barely notice. Your mind is on the journey ahead, each step a calculation. The city's tolerance is a shifting thing, and you have learned not to trust its promises. A figure steps from a doorway, blocking your path. His robe is plain, but his posture is confident. He asks your name, his voice low but firm. You answer, careful to keep your tone respectful. The exchange is brief, but the tension lingers long after he moves on. You continue down the street, heart pounding. Encounters like this are common, but never routine. Each one is a reminder that your place in the city is never secure. You hear footsteps behind you, quick and uneven. But when you glance back, the street is empty. Night in medieval Baghdad is never silent. You step inside, latch the warped wooden door, and press your back against it as if that thin plank could keep chaos at bay. The city's pulse seeps through the mud-brick walls, shouts, laughter, a baby's wail, and the dull thud of someone's argument echoing from the alley. The air smells of old smoke, sweat, and something sharper. Maybe onions, maybe fear. Even here, in what passes for sanctuary, you're hemmed in by life you can't control. Your home is a single room, barely wide enough for a sleeping mat and a battered chest. The floor is hard-packed earth, cool but gritty beneath your feet. A clay hearth squats in the corner, its embers still glowing from the evening meal. You want to relax, but the memory of a neighbor's grudge flickers in your mind. In this city, a careless word can follow you home like a shadow. From above, footsteps creak on the roof, someone tending pigeons, or maybe just watching. Privacy is a luxury for the wealthy, and you are not wealthy. The walls are so thin that you hear your neighbor's laughter, then the sharp snap of pottery breaking. You wonder if it's safer to stay silent, or to make noise so you're not mistaken for a thief. Every choice is a calculation. A sudden gust pushes dust through the cracks, swirling it around your ankles. You cough, and the sound carries. Someone in the next room coughs back, mocking or maybe just bored. The city's closeness breeds suspicion. Any sign of illness, any hint of weakness, can make you a target. You try to focus on the small comforts, the familiar scratch of wool, the faint sweetness of dates left from supper. But even these are reminders of what you could lose. If a spark leaps from the hearth, the whole row of homes could go up in flames. You check the coals, tamp them down, and listen for the telltale hiss of danger. Fire is the city's constant threat, and no one will save you if it comes. Outside, the night market is winding down. The calls of traders fade, replaced by the shuffle of feet and the low murmur of deals struck in shadow. You remember the story of a neighbor who vanished after an argument over a borrowed jug. In Baghdad, grudges smolder longer than embers. You hear a scuffle in the alley, a sharp cry, then hurried footsteps. You freeze, heart pounding, as the sounds fade. In the morning you might hear rumors about what happened. Tonight you keep your head down and hope no one remembers your face. The city's rules are unwritten, but ironclad. You know when to lower your eyes, when to speak, when to disappear. One misstep, one careless gesture, and you could find yourself accused of theft or blasphemy. The Qadi's court is swift, and mercy is rare. You settle onto your mat, trying to ignore the persistent itch of dust and the distant clang of a night watchman's staff. Sleep is a gamble. Dreams offer no escape from the city's pressures. Even here, your mind races through the day's risks and tomorrow's uncertainties. A lull settles for a moment, broken only by the soft coo of pigeons on the roof. You almost relax. Then remember the story of a merchant who lost everything to a neighbor's false accusation. In Baghdad, envy is as dangerous as fire. You hear a hiss, was it the hearth, or a whisper through the wall? You strain to listen, pulse quickening. In this city, secrets are currency, and you never know who is listening. The air grows thick as midnight approaches. You can smell the tang of oil lamps, the faint whiff of animals penned nearby. A sudden silence falls, heavier than noise. It's the kind of pause that means someone is waiting or watching. You shift on your mat, the straw poking your back. You remember the advice, never let your guard down, even at home. Trust is a luxury, and every neighbor is a potential rival. A distant voice calls out, sharp and urgent. You tense, waiting for the sound to resolve into laughter or alarm. In Baghdad, news travels fast, but truth travels slow. You think of the city's power brokers, the vizier, the merchant, the imam, each with their own networks of spies and informants. Even here, your words could reach the wrong ears. You swallow your complaints and keep your secrets close. A cat yowls in the alley, chased by a thrown sandal. You smile, then remember that even small amusements can draw the wrong attention. Joy is fleeting in a city built on rivalry. Your thoughts drift to the caliph's palace, its walls thick and impenetrable. Power there is absolute, but even the mighty are not safe. You recall tales of gifts granted one day, heads rolling the next. Status is a shifting sandbank, and no one stands still for long. You hear the creak of a gate, the low murmur of voices. You wonder if the guards are making their rounds, or if someone is settling a score under cover of darkness. In Baghdad, The line between law and vengeance is thin. A sudden gust rattles the shutters. You shiver, not from cold, but from the knowledge that safety is always temporary. Walls keep out little but the wind. You close your eyes, willing sleep to come. The city's sounds fade, replaced by the drumbeat of your own heart. Tomorrow the cycle will begin again, and you'll face the same dangers anew. Dawn's first call to prayer cracks the silence above your rooftop, and you're already awake, eyes gritty from broken sleep. The city is never truly quiet, not even at this hour. In the alley below, a donkey brays, and the smell of last night's cooking fires lingers. The air is thick with dust and anticipation as Baghdad stirs. You pull on your tunic, feeling the rough weave against your skin, and brace for another day that promises nothing except uncertainty. You step out into the narrow street, joining a slow tide of bodies. The stones beneath your sandals are still cool, but the heat will rise soon enough. Every face you pass is half-shadowed, half-wary, each person scanning for danger or opportunity. The city's pulse is relentless, a thrum of merchants setting up stalls, children darting between legs, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Even the birds seem to argue overhead, their shrieks drowned by the growing human din. Baghdad's markets are already alive, a riot of color and noise. You're pressed on all sides by traders hawking spices, cloth, and dubious remedies. The aroma is overwhelming: coriander, sweat, and the sharp tang of vinegar. You keep one hand on your pouch, the other ready to deflect a stray elbow or a wandering hand. In this crowd, a moment's distraction is all it takes to lose your coin or your place. A sudden commotion ripples through the bazaar as a tax collector appears, flanked by two silent scribes and a guard with a heavy staff. The crowd parts, uneasy. You freeze, heart pounding. The collector's gaze sweeps the stalls, and you remember the stories. A missing tax, a miscounted measure, and a merchant's life upended in an instant. The air sharpens with suspicion, everyone hoping not to be noticed. You edge away, but the tension clings to you. The collector's retinue moves on, but the sense of peril lingers in the market's rhythm. Every transaction is now tinged with caution, every glance a silent calculation. You trade a few coins for bread, the baker's hands trembling as he counts your change twice. In Baghdad, even breakfast is a negotiation. The sun climbs, and the city's heat presses in, thick and relentless. You slip into a shaded courtyard, seeking a moment's respite. The walls here muffle the chaos, but you can still hear the market's pulse through the stone. A neighbor sweeps dust from her step, eyes flicking up at you, measuring your presence. Trust is a rare commodity. Every encounter is a test. You eat in silence, tearing bread with your teeth, listening for any sign of trouble. The courtyard smells of damp stone and old olive oil. A cat slinks by, tail twitching, vanishing into a crack in the wall. Even the animals have learned to move quietly. You finish eating, but the knot in your stomach remains. Back on the street, you're swept into a procession. Someone important is passing, or perhaps someone in trouble. The crowd thickens, voices rising in a mix of awe and fear. You catch a glimpse of a robed figure, head bowed, surrounded by guards. The city's justice is swift and public, and you know better than to linger. You slip away, pulse racing, the echo of shouts behind you. The alleys twist and narrow, forcing you to navigate by instinct and memory. Each corner hides new risks, a beggar with a sharp tongue, a group of youths eyeing your sandals, a merchant's apprentice eager for a quarrel. The city never lets you forget your place. You keep moving, careful not to draw attention. A sudden silence falls as you pass a walled garden. The hush is unnerving, broken only by the distant call to prayer. For a moment, you remember what stillness feels like. Then, a voice hisses from a doorway, someone warning you to keep moving. You obey, because in Baghdad, hesitation is dangerous. You reach your home just as the sun reaches its peak. The interior is cool and dim, a small mercy. You bolt the door and listen to the muffled world outside. The city's energy seeps through the walls, never quite letting you rest. You wash the dust from your face, the water gritty and cold. A neighbor knocks, voice low, asking if you've seen the taxmen today. You shake your head, careful with your words. Gossip is currency, but so is silence. You know that a careless answer can bring trouble to your door, or worse, to your family. In Baghdad, every conversation is a tightrope. You sit in the shade, watching dust motes swirl in a shaft of light. The quiet is deceptive. Danger is never far. You think of the market, the collector's eyes, the crowd's unease. Even here, behind locked doors, you are not truly safe. The city's reach is long. Afternoon brings new hazards. The streets fill with men returning from prayer, their voices loud, their tempers short in the heat. You keep your head down, blending into the flow. A merchant shouts about a stolen bolt of silk, and suspicion sweeps the crowd like wildfire. You slip past, heart thumping, relieved to be overlooked. You duck into a side alley, the shade a welcome relief. The walls are close, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and old refuse. A child darts past, clutching a loaf of bread, chased by a woman cursing his name. The city's rules are simple: survive or be forgotten. You pause at a well, drawing water with aching arms. The bucket is heavier than you remember, the rope rough against your palms. A stranger nods at you, eyes lingering a moment too long. You nod back, wary. In Baghdad, even a greeting can be a gamble. You drink quickly, the water cool, but tinged with grit. The well is a crossroads, a place where stories are traded and secrets overheard. You listen, catching fragments of rumor, taxes rising, a merchant arrested, a neighbor vanished.